Hey folks, welcome back to another Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark.
And I'm Anne.
Today we're taking a look at Imperius.
Imperius is a game for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. It lasts about 20 to 45 minutes, and it's brought to you by Colossal Games.
Great. Well, let's go see who will sit on the Dawn Throne.
The goal of the game in Imperius is to have the most victory points, meaning that you are the new ruler of the Dawn Throne. The game's going to play out in a couple parts. First, you're going to draft cards, and then you'll be playing cards on the different planets to determine who gets victory points.
Right. To set up the game, each player is going to take their faction board, along with their faction tokens and 6 faction cards. And there's also a casualty token that you'll add to your board.
Yep, so you'll take all the faction cards from all players, shuffle them together with the addition of 4 event cards. This is going to form your deck that you'll be drafting with in just a minute. You'll also take 4 planets and place them out. And you'll want to put them at the top because, you know, a place that you can have these columns of cards coming out underneath them on the table. And
finally, you're going to take the score tracker and put it out in the middle of the board where everyone can find it. And you will place one of your faction tokens at the 0 point.
Yep, and one thing to add, this is for a 4-player game. There are variant rules throughout the whole thing for a 2-player game.
Exactly.
For example, you only play with 3 planets, you have some extra cards, a few different drafting rules. So the rulebook goes over all of that, but we'll be taking a look at the 4-player game today.
All right, we're going to start off with the deal and draft phase. Every player receives 5 cards, and what we're doing here is we're going to draft 4 cards per player. And really, you're not just after your own faction, because there are benefits to stealing other people's cards and playing them on the different rows.
Exactly. I might want to take your assassin so that I can put your assassin wherever I want, as in a place that it's not going to come and attack me.
Exactly. Likewise, I might steal Anne's guard that protects her nobles, so she can't use them against my assassin. So there's definitely some interesting trading back and forth and trying to figure out what cards to pull into your hand.
There's also event cards as well, so you've got a lot to pick from, but you'll pick 4 of the 5.
Right. And then finally, that last card, that 5th card, will go to the first player. The first player will take those cards, shuffle them up, and deal 1 face up to each planet.
All right, next up is the dispatch phase. Starting with the first player, each person is going to take a turn playing 1 card from their hand and adding it to one of the planet's columns. Now, there's a couple things to note here. Cards can go out face up or face down, but there can never be more than 2 face down cards on a planet. So if there's already 2 out there, it's got to go out face up. The other thing is that there can never be more than 5 cards per planet. So once it hits 5, that's it. You've got to find another planet to put your card on.
Exactly. I love that there's some of that real decision making to be made. You know, suddenly that one planet you're after has filled up, or there's already 2 face down cards, and if you've got an assassin you're trying to deploy, is there a noble out there? You know, there's a lot of interesting things to consider when you play against all these different rows and your fellow players.
Yeah, and you really want to know what that face down card is, which I will say there's a few card rules that have rules that change things, so definitely consult the rule book on that. For example, there's a card that lets you look at one of the face down cards, which is really nice.
And those are generally around all the event cards.
Yep.
All right, now we move on to the resolution phase, and this is where you're going to be gaining victory points. You're going to be causing casualties and putting control markers on the planets.
All right, before we get into actually resolving these cards, let's take a quick look at some card anatomy. So in the top left-hand corner, you're going to have your initiative order, and this is going to determine which order you're resolving the cards, and it doesn't necessarily go in the order that you put them out. Directly underneath that, you have your strength and favor. Strength is the number in the top in red, and favor is the number in the bottom in blue. Over the right-hand side of the card, you have a banner that represents which faction a card belongs to, if it's not an event card, of course. And then on the bottom of every card, you have the card name and the action that it's going to be happening with that card.
All right, the first thing you're going to do in each of these rows is you're going to reveal the 2 hidden cards. And then, like Anne said, you're going to use that initiative number in the top left to rearrange the row from lowest to highest.
Yep, and then you'll start resolving the cards with the lowest number, working your way down to the highest number.
Exactly. All right, the 6 main faction cards are the Ambassador, the Commander, the Elder, the Noble, the assassin, and the royal guard.
All right, first up is the ambassador. If the ambassador's faction is favored, then they're going to score victory points. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at all the cards in the row, and each faction that has favor points on it, you're going to total those. So if blue has 3 favor points and red has 2 favor points, then blue is going to score those points.
Even if red triggered that effect, blue would still win.
Yeah, because they have the most favor. Now, it's going to score different points depending on what the card says. So for example, this one will score you 3 victory points. This ambassador will score you 4 victory points. And that's one thing to note. One thing I actually really like about this game, there's lots of little variant tweaks that...
Between all the different factions, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This might be a little better at that. This might be a little stronger in this.
I really like that as well. Some real neat decision making and keeping the game fresh because you could try a different faction every time, right?
Yep, and it says right on the card exactly what to do. So.
Right. All right, next up we have the commander. Commander is kind of the opposite of the ambassador that Anne just talked about, where he's going to use strength. And based on that faction, whoever has the most strength will gain victory points. And those victory points are going to vary based on the factions. Now, what's cool here is that the commander also allows you to place a control token on that planet.
Yep, and anytime you place a control token on the planet, you're going to take your control marker from your player mat and add it to that planet card up here at the top. Those tokens are going to stay there until the end of the game, and then they'll score you points at the end of the game. Right,
and if you happen to be out of control tokens, then you're just out of luck.
It means you're controlling a lot of planets, that's what it means.
Well, this is true.
All right, next up is the Elder card. And an Elder is just going to be contributing strength or favor. And whether they're contributing strength or favor depends on which faction you're playing.
Right. Now, the interesting thing here is that there are advanced rules and advanced elders that have more abilities and different effects that they can impose on that line of cards. Next up, we have the noble cards. Now, these cards score the victory points that are indicated on the planet. Now, what happens if there's multiple nobles of different factions in that same line of cards? Well, then all ties are broken with favor. So whoever has the most favor of that faction will win those victory points.
And that's the only noble that will get to claim the victory points.
That's the only noble,
that
yes.
Planet. All right, next up is the assassin that we mentioned earlier. And the assassin is going out for the nobles.
As long as there's some to be had, right, in that row.
Yes. And this is where that initiative order that we talked about comes into play.
Definitely.
Because the assassins are number 6 and the nobles are number 7. So if you hit the assassin first, if there is one, they're going to be able to take out the noble before the noble is able to score any points. So if there is a noble there, what's going to happen is that the noble is going to be removed from that planet before they're able to score. And the faction that noble belonged to, the assassin has their choice if there are multiple nobles. They're going to have to take a casualty on their casualty track.
Which is negative points at the end of the game.
Yes. So if the assassin is able to take out a noble, the assassin is also going to get victory points, which is indicated on the card how many points that'll be.
And if there's ties?
If there's ties, the assassin works the exact opposite as the noble. So strength is the tiebreaker for assassins.
And finally, we have the Royal Guard. The Royal Guard is the protector against those assassins. But, you know, right out of the gate, the first thing is that it's going to contribute strength and favor to your line. Now, what's interesting about this Royal Guard is that he acts truly as a protector. And what he does is that his initiative is before the assassin. So you can actually sacrifice him instead of sacrificing your noble, which allows your noble to still score his points for that planet. However, you still take a casualty.
Okay, so in addition to all the faction cards, there are the special event cards. And as we mentioned earlier, these let you do special things like peek at the cards that are face down or just straight up turn up the card for everyone to see.
Right.
There's things that affect control, things that add to or cancel other cards. There's a whole set of lots of different things.
Yeah, and you're only going to add 4 of these in each game. So that's also keeps it very fresh and very different. And the interesting thing here is that there are some real game-changing rules on these cards. And like so many games, when you come across cards like that might contradict the rule book, the card wins.
All right, so to finish up the resolution phase, you're going to continue to score each planet one at a time until all of the planets have been scored. After that, you're going to move into the reset phase. You'll collect all of the cards and prepare to begin the next draft.
Right. And you're also going to check to see if you've triggered the game end by someone reaching 20 points.
Yep, so once a player has 20 points, then that's the end, and you will add up your total points. So this is the number of points that you have been gaining throughout the game. You'll score victory points for the planets. And first what you'll do is look to see who has the most control of a planet.
Right.
And then you're going to score the victory points for that planet.
Now, if there's a tie in the planet, though, nobody gets scored.
No one gets them.
It's pretty harsh.
Yes. So once you've scored the individual planets, then you're going to look at how many control markers you have on planets. And you'll get 1 victory point per control marker.
Yep.
You'll also have to deduct your casualties, which will be negative points.
Indeed.
And then whoever has the most wins.
Now, if there's ties, though, whoever has the least amount of casualties wins. And if there's still a tie, then it's whoever has the most control tokens on planets. And then if there's still a tie, then you're going to share the victory and rule the known galaxy. All right, folks, just a reminder, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview, and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that may occur. Now, one of the things I really liked about this game is just that thematic take that in the card drafting and like stealing other people's assassins, and just some of the really neat, interesting choices that you can make by some hidden information about cards being down and face up. So those are some really neat things about this game.
For sure. And I also loved all of the varying things in the cards. So you might have more strength in your faction, or you might score more victory points from your assassin. All the cards are kind of a little bit different here, a little bit different there.
Yeah.
Especially so with the event cards. There's so many different options.
Yeah. I love those rule-changing cards, how it really radically changes up the game and makes you like, oh man, my whole plan just fell apart.
All of a sudden you can have 2 assassins on the same planet, or totally love that. The rulebook does have some suggestions on which events to play for your first game, which is great.
Cool. Get your feet wet in the game, it'll give you some flavor, and then once you play get those first games on your belt, you're like, oh, let's mix in those other cards.
Totally, and same with some of the more advanced cards that add in extra effects as well.
Right.
I also really liked the end game scoring,
especially
in the 2-player game when you're down by like 18 points, and then you can come back and win.
So that was pretty awesome. So what's cool there is that, we're like, oh, I don't need to worry about control of planets. But then you realize at the end of the game that, wow, that really could swing the point values. And I was like charging ahead doing all these other things. And really, you have to really kind of watch every aspect. You can't just...
Silent assassin.
You silent assassin over here. So that was definitely interesting, and we had a lot of fun. So... Folks, if this looks like a game that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they would appreciate your support. And I think that's it from us. And until next time, we'll see you at the table.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.